Now he really catch me off guard. And before I know it, I've spoke to him first time ever. I say, hi. So now we got a relationship. When you talk to someone lonely, even someone who act like he not lonely and advertise about his privates, one word enough to start a relationship. Saying hi means now you friends. Saying hi means now you got to keep on saying hi, and pretty soon you got to add something onto it. Saying hi means things going to get more complicated from here on out. Only one thing left to do, never see him again, because if you do, you're going to have to say hi, and saying hi got to lead to no good. So now I tied up in knots when I get back to the car. Mr. Hung's sitting there nice. He never throw a fit in front of the Buttles building. He's afraid of the curse. He's sitting there quietly. Looked like he got a thought he need to finish. I wait a minute to give him time. Then I say, Mr. Hung, we are not making any money on Buttles. The crippled people usually on special diets. Doctors won't let them buy Chinese food. Let's just stop coming here altogether. And Mr. Hung, instead of yelling at me, he says okay, and nod his head not wild, but slow and thoughtful, like he actually got some sanity in there. So I say, good, that's settled, because things getting too complicated in that building. As soon as we get the place out of our sight, the curse lifts, and Mr. Hung back to his old self. That's when he bring up about feeding his gravestone. First he start cawing at me about how I ain't going to work for him no more. Then he asked me to do him a favor. That's why no one else can work for Mr. Hung. That and the thing they call the language barrier. Now he telling me he going back to China to get his nephew. His nephew, a big grown-up, not a little boy. He need a man to work for him so he don't have to put up with someone like me. I'm thinking, go on and bring him over, Mr. Hung. America a melting pot. Don't let me stand in his way. Somebody's nephew, no threat to me. I seen them big boys from China, and they all about 5'2". Let's see his kung fu go to work in my neighborhood. Don't think I'll be losing my job anytime soon. I say, and by the way, what's the favor you want to ask me, Mr. Hung? Because you sure put me in the mood to do it with all your personal compliments. Mr. Hung telling me he taking his whole family to China for 1 month. He close up the restaurant. I say, what's the problem? He tells me mostly in Chinese that he can't explain it. He got to show me what he means. And I say, well, especially you're going to explain it in Chinese, you better show me. So off we go back to the Well-Hung Express, and for the first time ever, he invite me upstairs to their apartment. Mrs. Hung and 2 other ladies, they her sisters or cousins, they glance up from their steaming pots and fry vats, and there's no look on their face except blankness. Only Mrs. Hung's mouth just then gives me a quiver, just like a rabbit would. That's her way of giving me a welcome slap on the back. Now my fingers need some stretching, and while I'm up, maybe I'll eat something. My grandma calls out, I take some orange juice and soda crackers if you don't mind. Then she says, I hear you in there. Listen, it's time you think closer to home. When you having that date with a nice man? You see a nice man, you let me know, okay? They a lot of nice man right here. Stop right there, Grandma, before you make a fool of yourself. I know what you're going to say, and they all names of boys who live in your TV set. Yoo-hoo, Grandma, guess where we're living at? Ain't nobody here nice to date. They don't even use that word date. They got another 4-letter word they like better. You want me to date Mr. Howard? He's real nice. He a mathematical genius, too, going through the combo plates in numerical order. Only trouble? He's 67 years old. He look good for his age. So does King Tut. He looks good for his age, too. Here's your crackers and juice. My fingers is all stretched, and I'm getting back to my story. Now let me say something about Mr. Hung's restaurant. They got 4 tables, but it's mostly takeout. You stand at the counter and look up at a big plastic sign, shows you pictures of the food. It all looked good, but something always smelling funny in that restaurant. Maybe it's the ficus tree. It's dying and almost dead. They think it's so happy to be living in America, don't need water. If dead ficus leaves on the floor ain't being swept up mean good luck in Chinese, then they're very, very lucky people. Mr. Hung got 2 kids, a girl 8 years old and her little brother, both of them in black pixies with bangs straight across. The little girl always huddled over her schoolwork, even in the summer. make me sad to look at her. Bangs swinging off her forehead when she bend over, and then comes into view a big worry crease slicing her face in two. A worry crease ain't something you should be having till you're 30 or 40 years old, when you start thinking life ain't all it's cracked up to be. But when you 8, usually you be thinking it's pretty good. Poor little girl. Her eyebrows straight as her bangs. I like seeing the children with an arch in their baby brows. Make me imagine a little rainbow of happiness. But that sweet girl got eyebrows like the grim horizon. Nothing there but some kind of seriousness. Her baby brother always coloring or shooting his cars across the table. He got nothing to think about. His face just like hers, but got a big, bouncy idiot smile to it. They be taking up one of the 4 tables, but it don't make a difference. Nobody stays to eat here because of the smell, mostly laying low behind the garlic and oil, but coming out of hiding if you stay too long, like when you know they're a bunch of cockroaches, but they undercover. So now I tell you what's upstairs, and you're not going to believe it. First off, that's where the smell's coming from. Once you go up the stairs, it starts creeping around and come right out and attack. It starts in the little kitchen and move outward. Seem almost to be stuck like tar all over the walls. It's some kind of fishy smell. Make you sick. Mr. Hung take me to a corner of the main room, and it be made into a funeral parlor, Chinese style. They got a service all set up in a kind of little house. They given the dead people more space in the room than the living ones get. In the middle of the little house, there's a stick rising up like maybe you starting a tomato plant. But it's not a tomato plant. It's the center of importance. Guess what? The stick be the gravestone I'm talking about earlier. It's a group gravestone, got the names of dead people written on it. Don't ask me their names, because I can only hear Chinese. I can't read it. The stick's surrounded by pictures so old they come from the beginning of the photography era. In front of the stick is food and toys and a bunch of fanciful junk like they sacrifices. Like maybe the stick come to life and eat Mr. Hung's children if it don't get what it want. The pictures interest me most because of myself being a photographer. They surrounding the stick like a halo. But the halo crooked. All the photographs is hanging crooked like they just old business cards stuck with thumbtacks. Then Mr. Hung lights some incense and hold it between his hands and start bowing to the stick. Then he show me all the food, oranges and Camel Light cigarettes and cups of Chinese booze you don't want to know about. Mr. Hung makes me taste it later downstairs while everyone watch and laughs at me. It tastes like rubbing alcohol in Crest toothpaste. Mr. Hung say just a minute in Chinese, then he go down and bring up some hot rice, still steaming, and a plate of vegetables. I say, Mr. Hung, if you got an ancestor died a baby, you obliged to leave some Pampers for the stick? Mr. Hung telling me on holidays the stick get more food and other things. He telling me this because 4th of July coming up, and he expect me to do something special. First thing I'm thinking, I give the stick a Budweiser instead of that crazy Chinese booze. Mr. Hung open a drawer and take out some Chinese Monopoly money. It got the Chinese language written on it, except one thing in English, read, Bank of Hell. Well, that's a fine thing to do, I tell Mr. Hung. You giving the money called Bank of Hell. That's called blasphemy in English. Mr. Hung tell me burn the Blank of Hell bills on the 4th of July so his ancestors can have some money. There are about 1,000 things wrong with what I'm hearing him tell me to do. First off, if you burn the money, they can't have it because it's all burnt up. Second off, heaven don't have a checking account at the Bank of Hell. Third off, what they want money for on the 4th of July? They going to be buying sparklers and singing to George Washington? But there's no getting through to Mr. Hung, so I don't even try. I just tell myself, forget about it, because I've already decided I ain't coming up here and feeding his stick. Stick can just go on a crash diet till he come back from China with his big kung fu nephew who's going to take my job away. Then Mr. Hung dig deeper in his drawer. He take out a pretty paper sculpture of a telephone. He going completely crazy. He say burn that too so Stick can have a cordless phone. I point up to the sky and pretend I hear something ringing. Telephone! Mr. Hung nod. So then, real polite, I say, wouldn't the stick rather have a new car instead of a telephone? Mr. Hung start talking in Chinese, saying he already gave it a new car. Then I say, what about a hot tub? It get cold up in heaven, altitude so high. I be teasing Mr. Hung without mercy, and he don't know it. He just agreed to the hot tub. They given that stick airplanes and hot tubs and rice still steaming, and I'm thinking if they so concerned about feeding it piping hot meals, they at least ought to hang the picture straight. Because the ancestors looking like they mad at being hung so crooked. Ain't none of them cracking the least little grin. There's the grandpa and the great-grandpa and the grandma and those others, and all of them glaring at the camera. Not a single one got sense enough to think maybe my children like to remember me with a smile on my face. Sure, I understand. It'd be plenty hard to smile when you know you're getting your farewell to life picture taken. Don't matter what the photographer's squeaking in his hand to make you laugh. If I be the photographer, I just forget about the quacking duck and tell them the truth. I say, look, you about to die, and this is going to be the picture hanging up there, so act like you're having a good time in eternity so your children don't be fretting all the time. No wonder they keep giving you food and gifts. You look so miserable. Sound like you run a successful photo business with that duck, my grandma cackling in from the living room. I say, Grandma, if you was getting your picture took to put on top of your coffin so everybody see it during the service, how you look in that picture? I look good, she say. No, I mean, you smiling or you not smiling? I'm smiling, she say. I'm smiling real nice. I can tell Mr. Hung real proud of his side of the family, the way he's standing there, his posture erect, making me realize I think he older than he is because of the way he usually scuttle about like the ceiling way too low. But he got a young face and he got 2 young kids. We probably about the same age, and now we alone upstairs in a room together. I look at his face when it turned to the side, and I think maybe he not so ugly he get a good haircut. Time to change the subject in my head. This is getting dangerous. So I say, this is your side of the family, Mr. Hung? And when he say yes, I say, their faces look flat, like they've been smashed with an iron. That a trait that run in your family, Mr. Hung? But the insult didn't have my usual zest. Mr. Hung just stand there smiling at his ancestors, who ain't smiling back. I say to him, would you rather have, Mr. Hung, an ancestor who don't smile back, or an ancestor like my mother, who ain't even there? But Mr. Hung, he don't know what I'm talking about, so he can't give a good answer. Then he start talking again, his gong and tinkle Chinese English sounding like coins bouncing in an apron, everything like too much clanky music, and inside my head, it all going quiet, everything coming to a stop, everything turning off, and now it all quiet. Now it's just the swishy sound of nothing. One of them ancestors staring me down. She really got a flat face, no joke, and her picture fogging up from the hot rice till only her eyes is left. Before I know it, I'm looking back. My eyes meet flat face, and that a mistake. It's just like saying hi to Mongie. Flat face looking at me, and I looking at her, and now we got a relationship, and I got to uphold it. So when Mr. Hung asked me to feed his ancestor while he gone in China, I surprise myself and say yes. It's late. Looks like I'm in for the all night. Can't leave the story hanging. I'm writing so slow by hand and taking time out to rub my hand cramps. Don't have a computer. Maybe I get one later. My grandma already put on her nightgown and gone to bed. She dreaming of the photograph I'm going to take tomorrow. Now she don't think my camera's so useless. She's going to get all dressed up, and I spend the whole roll on her till I get something extra nice. Mr. Hung's still in China, so he don't know the ending yet. When he come back, he got a big surprise waiting for him. Before he leave, his hand do a frog hop across the calendar to explain Stick's feeding schedule. Frog hop mean every other day Stick's gotta eat. First 2 days the Hung family gone, I be thinking all the time about what to buy the Stick. Now my chance to introduce it to American food. But I don't go over there yet, because Mr. Hung, he set off some roach bombs when he leave. I see a whole box of them. I say, why don't you get a professional exterminator, do it right? But Mr. Hung, he cheap. He only paying me $35 to feed his stick, but he giving me $50 for stick's food. That make me feel real worthwhile to be $15 less than a stick. But that ain't nothing new. Mr. Hung is specialist in making me feel good about myself. The third day, it's safe to go in. Roach bombs be about ready to die down. By morning, I'm in Big Bear thinking about the stick. Right away, getting it some fresh pineapple instead of should be budgeting. But how many times you get to feed a stick? Don't laugh till you try it. You apt to get excited. Besides, today a big day for the stick, the 4th of July. Time for Budweiser and corn dogs, and maybe I get a sparkler I'm going to light instead of that incense. Come evening, I walk downtown for the celebration. Grandma set up her lawn chair in the empty lot. Gotta watch out for the dog do, but she happy sitting there with the other old ladies. There are 500,000 people crammed around the Scioto River, waiting for the fireworks, and the whole downtown set up like the state fair. Can hardly move, it's so crowded. Everybody drunk but acting nice. The police is everywhere, but they acting nice too. When I see the food stand for Belgian waffles, I know it's got to sample that. Got to give it a hot dog and mustard, and Stick's got to try some Dumbo ears for sure. Stick going to be American by the time Mr. Hung come back. Pretty soon Mr. Hung have to play at Dolly Parton music. Now I'm kicking myself a little bit for buying the fresh pineapple when all this good stuff lined up here in the Midway that used to be on Marconi Boulevard. Everybody excited when the fireworks start blazing up the sky. Patriotic music crashing from the loudspeakers and Channel 4 news team up high in a tree trimmer bucket. It all goes straight to the reward centers of my brain and I'm bursting with joy. Everyone enjoy the giant pom-pom firecrackers the most. They shaking in the sky like cheerleaders, look like sparks gonna fall right on top of you. Everybody go wild. I go wild too, but extra wild. I got a secret I'm keeping from 500,000 people all standing next to me. Ain't none of them gonna do what I'm gonna do tonight. Channel 4 investigative reporter ought to follow me home. Fireworks end. 500,000 people clear out like they're a big hole in the ground. By the time you're walking home, the Midway lonely as a halfway house, paper cartons blowing on the ground, and the beer cups all over, looking and smelling no different than a bathroom. People walking quietly, pushing strollers of kids, everybody acting like neighbors. You feel a comment you want to make, you go on ahead and say it. Someone turn around and answer you nicely, then someone answer them. By the time the walking group passed Mike's bar, we all a community, but no one say, let's go inside and share a drink. Mike's bar is not that kind of place. Don't look like anybody inside ever know about the 4th of July. Let me say one thing about Mike's bar that explain it all. If you need a beer at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, it's the place for you. But otherwise, best to stay away. Right next to Mike's bar is a nice art gallery because that's the positive direction our neighborhood's moving in. I got some plans for that art gallery. Already my snout pressed up to the window and I'm picturing my photographs hanging on the wall. When I wake up from my dreaming, who else but Mongie comes out of Mike's bar and land himself next to me. He's stretched out on his gurney, his head pop up to say hi. Now I got to say hi back because we got a relationship. He asked me, do I enjoy the fireworks? That's how it starts. One thing added to the hi, and then another thing added to that. Pretty soon you talking like you neighbors and best friends. I find myself blurting out, Mongie, I ain't going to marry you, so don't start getting any ideas. Then I move on. Show him nothing but my fast disappearing back. Now I all business. I got a stick to feed. I'm marching quick, and I don't stop till I get to the Well-Hung Express and push Mr. Hung's key in the lock. In case you think Mr. Hung sure trusting her a lot, think again. Mr. Hung's best friend is Master Lock. He got everything behind bars, even Mrs. Hung's clothes. Which, why would I want? They all smell like mothballs. But I'm feeling good as I open the door.